This is the Kia EV3. A small SUV that has already made quite a big impression. We've seen this car before, we know pretty much everything there is to know about it. It starts at just under £33,000 in the UK. It's got stacks of space, loads of useful tech. It has a range of up to 372 miles. And it is one of those rare beasts that looks just as good as the concept car did. So why am I here in Seoul? Well, the one thing we don't know about it is how it drives, and that is what I'm here to find out. But before we go for a drive in it, you know what to do. Please do subscribe to the channel and switch your notifications on, because if you're into electric cars, this is the place to be. So let's cut to the chase and start with driving. And this could be a very short video because the EV3 does drive really well. Oh, it's just such an easy car to drive. It's really stress-free. Look, for anyone out there who's worried that driving an electric car is complicated or feels different or weird in some way, driving this will convince you that it's not like that at all. In fact, the hardest decision you'll have to make is what battery to go for. Now, there's a choice of two, the entry-level 58.3 kilowatt hours with up to 254 miles of range, or this larger 81.4 kilowatt hour option with a claimed range of 372 miles, which is pretty impressive, isn't it? Now, both are available with a single motor up front, and that was a conscious decision in order to make the space back in the boot as large as possible. But there will be a dual motor version joining the lineup once they can figure out how to fit it in without compromising space. And there'll also be a sportier GT model. So both versions have a shared output of 201 brake horsepower. 0 to 62 takes at 7.4 seconds in the standard model. That drops slightly to 7.7 seconds in this longer range because, of course, it's heavier. Now, that's not massively quick by electric car standards these days, is it? I drove a Volvo EX30 last week that did 0 to 62 in 3.6 seconds. And I think that's a bit ridiculous, if I'm honest. I can remember driving a Dodge Viper back in the 90s that had cracked 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, and it literally blew my mind. It was so fast. And of course, what we've got with electric cars is that instant speed. And actually, I do think that this is more than enough. You know, after all, it's a family car. You've got loads of power there when you need it, for pulling away, for overtaking. And it just doesn't feel like it's overwhelming, which I think some electric cars are in danger of being. Now let's talk about regenerative braking, one of my favourite things on electric cars. So the EV3 has 3 different levels controlled from these pedals down here on the steering wheel. Comes on all models in the range. 3, which you do here, is the heavier. And if I just engage that, you get full one pedal driving, really handy for around town. And that's great in a city like Seoul, where you don't need to touch the foot brake at all. You can just use the accelerator to stop and slow. 2 is great on A roads, and the first level 1 or 0 is great for cruising on the motorway. It's a really nicely calibrated system. You know, it just works really well, enhances the drive, and I think it's probably one of my favourite things about how this car drives. Now, as with all Kias, you get different drive modes, which are operated here from the steering wheel. You've got snow, not needing that today. My Drive, you can set it up for yourself. You've got Eco, which of course gives you a bit more range, normal and sport. So we've hit a bit of traffic. Now is a time to point out something that I do really like about this car. It's a system that engages semi-autonomous driving, so it works alongside the regenerative braking, and it links to the inbuilt navigation system. It won't work if you sync to CarPlay or Android Auto. Now what it does, it uses sensors to monitor the speed of the car in front, and it will automatically adjust the speed as needed. Will also independently control the steering. It's really nice in horrible motorway traffic like this, and I used it yesterday on 4-lane motorway like this, and found it to be a really seamless system. You know, It was chucking it down yesterday. I had a couple of hours of driving. I had jet lag. It was roads I don't know. And it really took away a lot of the stress. Now, we have seen this system on Kias before, but this one has just had some subtle improvements. And while you do it at the moment, have to just keep your hands lightly on the wheel. I suspect we will see this system licensed to use in the UK fairly soon, hands off the wheel, whilst you've got your eyes on, of course. You know, for use on major motorways, as you can with the Ford Mustang Mach-E. The other thing to point out is that on certain models you get a head-up display. Oops, there's a bing and a bong. You get a head-up display and it's absolutely brilliant. It's so clear and it's giving me so much information about what's happening around me. I do think all the driver assistance tech on this is very impressive, particularly when you consider the price that you're getting it all for. Inside, the EV3 has got more space than any other car in its class, apart from the Megane E-Tech, which can match it. That's because the EV3 is wide and tall. Trust me, it's like a TARDIS in here, with loads of storage compartments, plenty of room in the back, and a boot that is bigger than all the competition. And it also has a decent sized frunk. But while it's actually smaller than the Kia Niro, it's still no longer than cars like the ID3 or the Cupra Born, and that does make it easy to park and nip in and out of busy traffic. Kia say the EV3 has been designed with town in mind, and you do really feel that when you drive it around a city like Seoul. So I've pulled over in a random car park so we can have a chat about the interior. And it's worth bearing in mind that I did a full walk around video of the EV3 in studio, and that has all the details. So if you do want a deep dive, make sure you check that video out. First thing I'm going to point out is the seats. They're really comfy. I've been driving in this for a couple of hours. They're great, as are the headrests. I love these headrests. We saw them first in the EV9 and they look fantastic with just the mesh on them. They're really cool, but they're also just really comfortable places to rest your head. So the interior, I mean, as we've said a lot about this car, it really has taken so much from the EV9, and straight away you'll recognise this screen, which is the main event. So what you get are actually 3 screens blended into one. 12.3 inch screen over here, which has got your navigation and all your infotainment. In the centre there's a smaller screen that's got climate control, then you've got all your driver information in front of you. And as you can see, there are buttons, hooray! It's a really nice blend actually of a very slick infotainment screen that isn't laggy, that's intuitive to use, and physical buttons, and then also buttons here on the steering wheel. And I do prefer this kind of setup really than that completely minimal everything in the screen. Steering wheel is really nice, isn't it? It just feels good in your hands, and I love the flat bottom. You don't get this in all the models in the range, but it's a fairly new design for Kia, and I do like it a lot. So let's talk about storage, because I'm not sure about storage. I'm still a bit undecided about it. So you've got a glove box, fairly decent sized. Door bins are a little narrow. And then there's this bit in the middle. So you would expect under this armrest that there would be a storage compartment, but there isn't. Instead, you've got this tray that slides out. And the idea is that when you're parked up charging, or maybe waiting to pick the kids up, you can get your laptop out and you can work on that. I think it's a great idea. I just don't know if you're actually going to do that in real life. I have a feeling it might be a bit of a gimmick because all your main storage is under here, and it is a little bit awkward to access. I mean, it's a good amount of storage. I can fit my handbag in there. You've got 2 decent sized cup holders. But yeah, I suspect that you will wish, if you own this car, that there was just an area in there for you to chuck things in and keep them out of the way. If you are using it to keep your laptop or your iPad on though, there's no shortage of charging points. They're all over the place. You've got them here, you've got them in the back. Now the one thing I really like in here that you can't sort of see really is the fact that almost 100% of the materials that are used are recycled. You know, there's some real thought gone into making this as sustainable as possible. And if you want to find out more about the story, what materials have been used, where they are, there's a little QR code just over there on the side. And if you scan that, it gives you a deep dive into everything that's gone into the interior. I think it's so refreshing to have a car interior that doesn't have piano black. I'm so over it in the interiors, and this looks modern and cool, and it just looks a more interesting place to be. So yeah, I like it a lot.
Pricing in the UK starts at £32,995 for the Air. That's with a 58.3 kilowatt-hour battery, which is good for 267 miles on a single charge. The larger battery jumps up to £35,995 and will give you that 372 miles of range. The higher spec GT line only comes with that larger battery, and that's priced from £39,495 up to £42,995 for the top of the range GT line S. And on that model, you also get the option of adding a £900 heat pump. Of course, the model I really want to try is the entry-level one, but today we have the full-fat version with its fancy Harman Kardon premium sound system, a head-up display from the bigger EV9, a sunroof, electric heated and ventilated front seats, heated rear outer seats, remote parking and loads of safety kit. It does, of course, bump the price up, but it's still well equipped for the money when you look at the competition. Design-wise, as I said at the start, I think it looks great. It's unmistakably a Kia with more than a hint of the EV9 about it. But what I really love is how it manages to look angular and sporty all at the same time, while it's still being designed with loads of aerodynamic goodness in mind to help with efficiency.
Almost as if we planned it, I've found a charging cafe in the centre of Seoul, which is such a good idea, isn't it? Really nice looking chargers and somewhere that sells coffee and dessert. This is my kind of place. So when it comes to charging, the entry-level car will charge at speeds of up to 120 kilowatts. This larger battery model will take up to 128, and there is the option of 22 kilowatt AC charging coming down the line, which is handy. Now, that charging speed isn't as quick as some of the competition. Cars like the VW ID3 and the Volvo will charge quicker. But just like the competition, a 10 to 8% on a rapid charger like this will take about half an hour. And that's because Kia's done some clever stuff with the battery tech that allows it to preheat. This is also linked to the car's sat-nav, so it will optimise the battery temperatures when you're heading to a fast charger. And if you're not using the built-in system, you don't need to worry about that because you can actually manually activate it as well, which is great. And whilst you're charging, you can, of course, make use of the table if you want to. And you could also do in-car gaming, or you can stream, so you could watch Netflix. And if you want to make yourself a cuppa, you can also do that using vehicle to load, although that does only come with the top of the range model. But who will want to be bothered with that when you've got a cafe in Seoul to explore? Right, what's the Korean for? I would like a very strong coffee, please. Off I go. Even the coffee's good. I mean, what a great place this is. I haven't seen anything like this in the UK. So we are slap bang in the centre of Seoul on one of the busiest roads, and it's just got 4 rapid chargers. And incidentally, the chargers look really nice as well. And then it's attached to this really cool coffee shop where you can stop and work if you want to do, or just simply sit and watch the world go by. I love Seoul, such a cool place.
As I said, loads of thought has been given to make the EV3 as efficient as possible. Cars that slip through the air use less energy, and that means more miles, which is good. So Kia has done things like add an AAF. That's an active air flap to you and me. It opens and closes when you're on the move to reduce the drag. It's also got a 3D printed underbody which covers 80% of the underneath of the car. That again helps with drag. There's also a new climate control system, which is compact to reduce weight and also more efficient. And you can keep an eye on how you're driving with a range guide. Now, this will tell you how much range is possible depending on your driving style at the moment. It uses previous data about the car and how it's been driven. A gauge turns green if you're getting the most from your range, and orange if you aren't. So how efficient was I? Well, my drive was in sweltering heat and I was getting close to the claimed range. But as always, I will reserve judgment on this until I can get hold of a car in the UK in colder weather to see what impact that has. But it's worth pointing out that in the FIA winter range tests, Nicola drove a Kia EV9 and it performed brilliantly. So we'd expect to get similar performance from this car too, given the focus Kia has put on getting the most out of a smaller battery rather than just putting a bigger one in.
The car industry is just so fascinating. I would never have thought when I started in this industry well over 20 years ago that I would be standing here raving about a Kia. But the first time I came to Korea was 12 years ago to drive Kia's very first EV, the Soul. And the short drive that I had in that car then really gave me the feeling that Kia was going to become a force to be reckoned with when it came to electric cars. And you know what? They have, haven't they? I've tried really hard to be critical of this car, and if you've seen my Ford Capri video, you will know that I don't hold back if I don't like something. But honestly, it's very hard to find fault with the EV3, as I said at the start. It's a great looking car, it's packed with tech. We now know it drives really well, and you get a lot of range for the money. And that is a package that is very hard to beat.